Welcome to our webinar, Supercharge Azure DevOps with Advanced Scheduling and Robust Project Management. If you enjoy this topic, please explore our YouTube channel for more videos and follow us on LinkedIn to be in the know for event announcements and speaking engagements.
Welcome, everybody. Today, we're going to talk about the world of Azure DevOps and how OnePlan has been designed to enhance and supercharge Azure DevOps to provide additional capabilities, which include advanced scheduling and robust project management, as well as a few other areas that we're going to cover today. So with that, let's get started. You know, people are using Azure DevOps today in a broad way, and reasons for that is it's an integrated tool set. You know, it provides a comprehensive suite of tools for all software development lifecycle activities, including planning, coding, building, testing, deploying. We're going to focus more on the planning and work execution piece today, but it provides a way to do this stuff in an all comprehensive integrated fashion moving forward for teams. And the flexibility, each service that's provided in these tools by Azure DevOps can be used independently or integrated with existing tools. It makes it adaptable for people to work the way they want and structure the things that they want to do. And it also enhances collaboration and communication. It fosters better collaboration between the software development folks and the operations teams where we're deploying the code and things like that. And it just enhances communication and reduces any misalignment or lack of connection that we might have. It also supports continuous integration and continuous deployment. Once again, going from development into operations and doing it in a more seamless fashion and have more fast and reliable releases. And from a scalability perspective, it's designed to scale with your needs, whether you're a small team or a large enterprise. And as organizations grow, it's something that they can grow with. And as important as anything else is security and compliance, and Azure DevOps is provided from the Microsoft Cloud, and it has the features and compliance certifications that you need to have confidence that you're putting these things in a reliable environment. Now, we're going to focus today on the work management piece of things and the work elements side of things. And Azure Boards is a tool within Azure DevOps for teams to plan, track, and discuss work across the entire development process. And it really provides for work item tracking, so we can create and manage work items in the system, such as, and you can define these in the tool, user stories, tasks, bugs, and other features that these fall within. And it helps in organizing and prioritizing this work effectively. And it does it in a visual way. It provides Kanban boards so that you can track the status through different stages and other elements, and also visually helps to identify bottlenecks and hopefully optimize workflow. It provides built-in Scrum boards for the Agile folks that want to do that they can use in stand-ups and planning meetings. And then you can also identify and organize in backlogs and sprints. So you can manage your product backlog, plan your sprints, and then prioritize the work within those through the sprint cycle. And then there's dashboards and reporting for this data that are specific to the elements that we're working with above there. It's also integrated with GitHub, so it enhances the traceability and collaboration between development and operations, as we talked about in the prior slide. And it also integrates with collaborative tools like Microsoft Teams and Slack to enable efficient communication across the board. So this is all great stuff, but Azure DevOps and Azure Boards it stops at a certain point. This is great for individual teams, individual projects that you're working on, one by one across the board. But what Azure DevOps really needs is portfolio management capabilities and some additional things as well. Things like being able to organize more data in different views at the portfolio level, at the multi-project, multi-team level, to be able to do resource capacity planning and tracking across all that, so that we're making sure that we're working comprehensively across the board on all of our work, and that we are not committing to things that we can't deliver on because of resource bandwidth. And then financial planning. Many organizations need to track financials around the projects in their portfolio and the work elements in their portfolio, and the ability to provide that at the portfolio level is something that's key, let alone intake and ideation, and even potentially even things like alignment with strategy. Now, the choice of execution tools and methodologies, the focus of this webinar today is Azure DevOps. And the idea here, though, is that your backlogs and your work items could be coming on the right, like you see there, from Azure DevOps. But there also could be schedules of a more waterfall nature. And we'll talk about how those things can be independent or combined with one another to provide a comprehensive view of what you're doing. And the schedule could be done right in OnePlan. It could come from elements in Azure DevOps or some other planning tools that you might see fit. And even though this is agile approaches for the most part in Azure DevOps, time tracking is important to many organizations who need to do things like capitalize labor, like do chargebacks internally, or even potentially build to clients on the things that they're working on within Azure DevOps. So once again, these are things that aren't inherent within Azure DevOps comprehensively. So let's say, for example, a hybrid PPM solution where you have agile teams, as you see them below here, with maybe multiple work efforts going on from Azure DevOps in different agile plans, but the portfolio level up above in OnePlan, this is where program and portfolio management level things happen. This is where intake and investment approval might happen. This is where the financial and resource capacity planning might happen. And it might be needed to be done with more traditional senior leadership in your organization who wants to see things in more business terms and dollars and returns and those types of things, where the Azure DevOps folks are working with more agile metrics and the types of things that we'll talk about. OnePlan enables this. Also, you might have an agile PPM solution where the leadership is looking at this from a more agile perspective, and at the portfolio level, they might want to look at things like agile boards and do things like program increment planning. And the idea there is it's still program and portfolio management, financial and resource capacity planning, investment approval. You may just be looking at these things in different ways at the leadership level in this case, from the same plans that are feeding into that portfolio level. Now, at the detailed data integration level, OnePlan really provides the portfolio level things, and you see the line of demarcation here at the top, where we might have portfolios, programs, and then there may be epics, of which there may be corresponding epics over in Azure DevOps. But for example, if all of the intake, ideation, requests, and approval is happening over here in the portfolio management system, perhaps on this case, in many cases we have, the epic might get created upon approval in the portfolio management system, in this case OnePlan, and then created over in Azure DevOps. At that point, the teams over in Azure DevOps may build out their backlogs over on the Azure DevOps side, where they identify, and very common template in there is the features and user stories and tasks and bugs. And as those get identified and entered into the system, the integration will automatically bring that data and the data you map over to the portfolio management solution back over into OnePlan and have that roll up into the portfolio level information and provide comprehensive pictures of that information, both live in the system and via reporting. Now, by default, typically these come into a work type in OnePlan called the backlog in the work plan, but we'll talk about other variations of this. And this is done through a standard connector that's available between Azure DevOps and OnePlan. Now, another aspect could be the same similar type of thing, but this portfolio level may have a predominantly waterfall, say, schedule over in OnePlan, in the work plan level. And there may be a pre-built schedule in there that has a number of different summaries and tasks in there, but there may be features, user stories, tasks over in Azure DevOps that you would like to intermingle into a hybrid schedule. And in that case, the project may be approved, and then the work elements may come back over into a schedule in addition to a backlog over in OnePlan, so that you can actually have the flexibility to have a hybrid schedule where you may have more waterfallish aspects of this, like in the overall requirements and design pieces that may not be in Azure DevOps, but the Azure DevOps component can be then intermingled into that overall schedule. And we'll talk about how what the benefits of those are a little bit later on in the webinar. So if we do this and we're all agile, in this case, we're focusing on Azure DevOps today, but agile and iterative things that you might be doing might be happening with tools across the board. You could be doing it at Azure DevOps, you could be doing it in something like Jira, or even OnePlan has its own backlog and agile capabilities within it. But the idea here is to provide portfolio level information such that all the data here feeds into a common solution that rolls up into things like your programs and your value streams and your portfolios, and then your strategies or your strategic themes. The idea here is that teams can work the way they want in an agile fashion, and whether or not leadership has an agile mindset in the way that they look at things, we can still also provide what they often want, which is language of the business, things like internal rate of return and net present value, return on investment, and other cost and financial information. OnePlan enables this. Now, different execution methodologies are in the mix. So we've been talking so far about Azure DevOps and maybe using a predominantly agile approach in Azure DevOps. And Agile continues to grow. People are trying to get more responsive. They're trying to get quicker to deliver. And that still is continuing to grow, though it's very pervasive, at least in parts of most organizations. But waterfall is still widely used for a variety of different types of work or different types of projects that lend themselves more to that. Now, there's a bunch of agile variants of things like that. There's hybrid methodologies that use a combination of waterfall and agile. And then often people are using personalized cherry-picked versions of these things. So you need flexibility in your portfolio management solution to do that. So in that case, we may end up with something called adaptive portfolio management, and which Azure DevOps could feed into. Now, your traditional project portfolio management was more of a waterfall artifact in the past, and many people are moving from that, though many people actually live there. But many in this world of agile transformation are trying to get more agile and aspire to get all the way over to the left here in the dark blue with more overall agile portfolio management and scaled agile practices. Now, whether or not you get fully over there with all your work, it takes time, often years, to make that transformation happen. At a minimum, this adaptive portfolio management, which is a blend of tools, blend of methodologies and frameworks of both agile, waterfall, and hybrids, in that you'll spend at least some time in this adaptive state where you'll have one foot over here in the more traditional, another foot over here in the agile. But the analysts are now finding that in this age of agile transformation, the vast majority of organizations find themselves in some measure of adaptive all the way through. So it's important to be able to accommodate that if you want to have a comprehensive portfolio management solution. So in that adaptive world, there are some, let's just say, pitfalls. If we allow it to happen, we can also breed information silos through proliferation of using different tools for different purposes. And this can breed increased costs and inefficiencies across the board. For example, if you have to report up or report comprehensively across, it could require many organizations to do manual mashups of data from multiple tools and data sources, which can be time consuming. They might have to do manual report creation once that data is mashed up and formatted and updated and packaged into individual distributions for different stakeholders and organizational levels. With all these different tools, many organizations that have different tools in silos find themselves entering the same exact data in different places. Not only is this time consuming, but it's prone to errors as we transcribe data, just from the human element. And then disconnected information silos is difficult to remain accurate and current across the board and in sync. And oftentimes we're chasing team members for status and updates that they're supposed to provide in different tools at different times instead of one comprehensive place. And this limits the completeness and timeliness of our submissions, let alone resource capacity planning, which many folks kind of throw up their hands and they have a totally separate piece of data, maybe often a spreadsheet that's disconnected from everything else that we're executing on. So once again, this is costly and inefficient ways of doing business in these silos. So if we look at a hybrid with Agile and Waterfall combined, OnePlan accommodates and brings those things together. So for example, the Azure DevOps component or as many Azure DevOps plans that you have can be brought in and rolled up as before, as we talked about, into the OnePlan portfolio. But you might have waterfall schedules that might be done in OnePlan themselves, a Microsoft project, a variety of other tools, and those same connected approaches with connectors can have those things coexist and feed into a hybrid portfolio up above and give you that comprehensive view without all that manual silo effect that we talked about and the inefficiencies that are inherent in that. So the teams can then do waterfall, agile, iterative, methodologies, use the tools that they want, including Azure DevOps, right? And then leadership can actually get the visibility they need to track their investments and see how they're progressing. Are they getting the returns that they want? When deliveries are going to happen and those types of things. But the teams get to continue to work in the tools and the methods that make the most sense for the types of work that they're doing. Once again, satisfying the needs of all levels of stakeholders. Now, we talked about the things that are missing in Azure DevOps, and OnePlan provides this comprehensively, and we'll talk about beyond just, as I showed in the diagram, how the data at the levels might interchange between OnePlan and Azure DevOps via the integrations. But the overall capabilities, and you don't have to use all these, but just want to make you aware of things that are available. For example, sometimes aligning with strategy is important, and having objectives and key results or OKRs identified and tracked, and understand which of them our work efforts are aligned with and supporting can be important to make sure that we're working on the right things. There may be enterprise architecture elements which we track in a light way, where you may have to be associated or have to factor in things like other products or applications that need to be addressed or business capabilities, etc. And those can be identified and aligned here within OnePlan as well, let alone the traditional ideation and request function, which is really a pipeline for the things that we may potentially work on and approve in the future. And once we do that, the planning piece is at the portfolio level, is deciding what we want to work on and then defining those things. And they can look at them more in traditional list views, more board views like we talked about for the more agile oriented people, and roadmap views for the more delivery and product maybe oriented types of folks. All the same data, but with different perspectives across the board. Important is, if we're going to approve things and commit to things, we need to understand, do we have the capacity to deliver? And across the board, across all projects, whether they're coming from Azure DevOps directly, or whether they're being done in, say, a OnePlan or another tool itself, having it all brought together into OnePlan gives us a comprehensive picture of what our commitments are, and do they exceed our capacity or our ability to deliver? The financial planning we talked about, which can be done in detailed cost categories as you see fit. And then important, we'll talk about this and show it a little later, is what if scenario modeling. In this agile world, things change quickly, and we have to adapt, and we have to look at alternatives as far as approaches. What are we going to maybe postpone and interject based upon priority or urgency? What should be approved versus things that we may want to defer or put into a later timeline, and be able to look at a bunch of different alternatives. On the execution side, OnePlan does have its own place for work elements, and those can be generated right in OnePlan itself in a more waterfall work plan, or in a more agile plan, right, with boards and backlogs. But you see all the icons below, and on the agile plan side, you'll see the Azure DevOps icon as well as others. You could combine Azure DevOps with a variety of inputs from other tools that are being worked on in your organization to still provide that comprehensive view. Or you could just be using, if your focus is strictly Azure DevOps for execution, it could be Azure DevOps all day long, but providing that additional portfolio management capability to extend just what you're doing within Azure DevOps. So once again, flexibility. And other elements like issues, risks, changes, lessons learned, key decisions, etc., are important. On the individual plans, to get that overall resource capacity plan, we want to bring in resource plans on an individual plan by plan or work effort basis. And that can be more top-down capacity planning as we look at things from a high level, or it could be just a roll-up of the work elements and the resources we assign to those from the bottom up. And we can negotiate from a more generic resource requirement to who specifically is going to do that with the people that own and manage those resources in your organization. And then team members, they need to have that comprehensive place to mitigate that pain of those silos, is have a central My Work area where they can actually update the tasks that are assigned to them, the backlog items that are assigned to them in one comprehensive place, see what's expected of them, and provide the feedback in one central, easy to access place. And that same thing holds true if you have to report time. And we'll talk about some ways that that can be done for those people that need to capture time against their projects. And reporting, individual status reports on projects or different efforts, dashboards that can be at different levels, portfolio level, program level, down to the individual project level, types of reports for different audiences. And then with the different elements that might be related, for example, you might be aligned with a strategy, or you might be aligned with an enterprise architecture element, or et cetera. Be able to look graphically and visually at how those things are interrelated and associated with each other. Something can be powerful, not only in deciding what you should work on, but what things may be on track and what things may be at risk, and how other elements might be putting you at risk. Ultimately, we want to deliver value at the end of the day. We'll talk a little bit today. We have other webinars that really focus on our Sofia GPT, which is our AI assistant that's built right into OnePlan. But we'll give maybe a couple examples today, time permitting. But that's not the focus of what we're here today. But ultimately, our goal is to do the right work, select the right things to work on, and then execute well in an efficient fashion and deliver value and deliver it well. Now, these integrations I talk about, these aren't like one-off, custom coded integrations that we're doing. OnePlan's OneConnect integrations provide connections to a variety of the popular tools that are out there today, whether they be software development tools, and we're talking about Azure DevOps today, but there's others. You can integrate with your financial management systems or your ERP, other scheduling systems, other intake systems, et cetera, service management, CRM systems, if that's your intake for things. We can integrate with all of these different things, and once again, bring it into that hub we're talking about to eliminate those silos. So on top of the data integration, one more piece to talk about here is our fused UI strategy, and that's to stay working in the tools that you use every day. Now, OnePlan can just be used simply in your browser, your favorite browser, and just you can leave it at that. However, sometimes people have built solutions in the no-code platform of Power Apps, and we can consume OnePlan. It's been designed to be used right within your Power App. It's a authorized Microsoft Teams application, so you might want to use it in the context of your collaborative efforts within Teams. Today, we're going to talk about OnePlan and Azure DevOps, to where the things and the capabilities that I'm going to show you in OnePlan today can be accessed while you're still in Azure DevOps. You don't have to leave to another tool, lose the efficiencies that you might have because of task switching. You might be able to do that right within the tool that you live in, which is Azure DevOps. Same old truths with Dynamics and SharePoint, and in a non-Microsoft way, we can do the same thing in Jira as well. Now, Sofia GPT is our OnePlan assistant, and it's really purpose-built for this portfolio management environment and strategic portfolio management. It's based on Azure OpenAI, and it's tailored for this use case in this domain. Azure OpenAI is, as opposed to say OpenAI with ChatGPT out in the open internet, has the additional compliance and protections and security you'd expect from the Microsoft cloud. But it not only leverages the things that it knows from the general large language model that's out there, that's in there, but it's been trained on this portfolio management discipline by us, and it's been trained on what OnePlan does, as well as it can look at the live data that's in your OnePlan system, factor it into its responses to your prompts without learning or saving that data at all, meaning you can get more dimensions of information factored into its responses to you. And it's always on in OnePlan. So for example, down in the lower right, you'll see that there's a button, and it gives you access to Sofia, which then it gives you, depending on context-wise where you are in the solution, it may give you some sample questions to ask, or you can just ask freeform any of your own. So as you are already used to doing within something like ChatGPT, it's simple for you to access and do. Now, sample use cases for AI and portfolio management may be around strategic planning, portfolio optimization, helping you with work management, risk assessment, resource allocation, and investment forecasting. And we'll show you where you can go and maybe look at some other webinars that are on demand that are more focused on the AI aspect of the tool. So with that, I'd like to start with a demonstration live of OnePlan here for you to take a look at. Now, OnePlan is a portfolio management solution, and there is a navigation area here on the left-hand side that is configurable to the types of things, and the things that you see here might be dependent on your role and the access that you have. But here, I would like to stress that there's different ways that you can structure this. We do have templates that are out of the box, and say, for example, in a more scaled agile approach, you may have a portfolio hierarchy of plan types. In this particular case, in a more agile-oriented fashion, I've got value streams and then programs within the value streams, and then I've got projects and epics in here, and the epics have features and the projects have deliverables within them. And the idea here is that you can organize these things in a way that you see fit for what we would call a primary hierarchy, and the way that's done. And if you'll notice here, you'll see that there's icons here to the left-hand side. So for example, this particular epic on payments is actually tied to an Azure DevOps plan or an Azure board that's in there that allows us to share the work items and the data points that are in there. Now you'll see ones that have no icon at all, and those are being managed entirely within OnePlan. And in this particular case, we only have 2 systems connected to this environment in particular, but you'll see a Jira icon where some people may be doing Agile work within Jira, and that can be fed into here. But this is just as easily could be all Azure DevOps icons for all your, if you're completely dedicated to Azure DevOps, it supports that model for you as well. Okay. Different views. This is kind of a portfolio summary that's talking about what things are associated to it, number of user stories, story points, how many we completed, how many remaining stories we have, etc. Right? We might go in and go to, say, more of a prioritization view in here, and that might just show you different data points that might exist here in OnePlan, and some of it may be coming over from Azure DevOps. And in that prioritization piece, we can show things, for example, like the values that help drive our weighted shortest job first or WSJF score. That may be our prioritization mechanism. This came from our epic hypothesis that was in here. We also have board views of the same portfolio. And so as we come in here and we want to do PI planning, you could actually basically set up your program increments and work across there and look at things like dollars and figure out what PIs fit within budget, or maybe your constraining factor is the story points you're looking at and seeing how, whether you've over or under allocated according to the story points that you said that you can do within those. And then I mentioned also the roadmap things that you could actually do within here as well. And once again, these elements are basically portfolio level items that give us a roadmap view of how we're doing and when these things are going to deliver across the board. Same data, just a different perspective across all that. Okay. Now I'm going to actually go over to another environment to basically show you a different portfolio hierarchy. In this case, if you have a more hybrid type of environment, maybe there's one or more portfolios in a portfolio level, and then there's a program level, and then you may have projects which maybe indicate more waterfall type work efforts, and epics that may be more agile efforts that are coming from Azure DevOps, for example. But once again, you can structure this the way you look at the world in your organization. Now, let's say, for example, I come in here and I go look at this portfolio summary view and I expand this. I can show the programs, and then I can show the projects and epics that are within here, right? And once again, just like in the other environment, you can see that there's icons here that have both Azure DevOps, Jira, and then nothing in here as far as icons to say that the program is being, a project is, or the epic is being managed entirely here within OnePlan. Okay. If I go into a prioritization view here, you can see there might be different prioritization approaches. So instead of WSJF, and maybe in this combined area, maybe there's business drivers on how well it strategically aligns. How well is it going to lower cost or increase revenue? And the alignment, is it extremely aligned with it or not aligned with it at all? Is it going to help us with risk reduction, et cetera? So it's, as we go through this, we have different views and different ways that we can prioritize within this whole portfolio. We could also go in here and look at things like program backlog progress if you're more agile focused. And as we go look at this particular view, it is going to give us, for example, each project or epic, how many features or user stories are being worked on within there, and what kind of progress is being made, and what the KPIs are around there. So once again, you have a variety of different views here at the portfolio level that you would not be able to get directly from Azure DevOps easily, if at all. Okay. The same thing holds true with the storyboard and the roadmap like we showed you earlier on. There's also cool things that we do snapshotting within the system. So for example, if I was going to look at things and wanted to see trends on how things are going, if we have snapshots for particular efforts, it's going to actually show us trends in here so that we can understand, are we progressing or regressing on certain elements like budget, issues, changes, etc., as we go on through here. Okay. Now, if I drill into a specific project, and you can see the VoIP phones is actually connected to Azure DevOps. And if I drill into VoIP phones, what I'll see here is, let's start in the details page. This is, we have templated details pages, but these can be configured with drag and drop forms building capability right here within OnePlan that allow us to do things like establish our life cycle or our phases or our gates, whatever approach that we take, right? It allows us to categorize and put the metadata around this project. It allows us to put business case narratives in here. It allows us to choose our prioritization mechanism. It allows us to have a snapshot of where we sit with schedule and financials at the current time and how we're doing on effort. And once again, how we're doing on the KPIs, et cetera. And once again, you can add the sections and the fields of data that you wanted to here, including custom fields that you can easily add on your own right into the mix here. On the financial side, there's the ability within this plan to then have detailed cost categories and track those to the degree that you want to. You can even have different what we call cost types, meaning this might be the original budget. You might have a revised forecast. You might track actuals and benefits. And our connector technology will allow you to get this data right from your financial system or an extract from your financial system. And you can do things like comparisons. So for example, if I have an original budget and a revised forecast, how are we doing against that? We thought we were going to be spending a certain amount in the budget, and then now the revised forecast says the timing of those expenditures have changed, and see where those things are have changed for the better or for the worse. Same thing holds true with resource planning, okay? As I go into the resource planning, you can do a top-down plan like this one, and you can plan in terms of hours or percentages or FTEs, for example. I want to look at that headcount, but it always has an eye on the overall. So for example, even though this is only at 0.19 FTEs, I'm over allocated in red because I have other work that I'm assigned to that already has me over allocated in this. Now, visibility like this would prevent us from inadvertently over allocating people with the visibility that we're looking at here, okay? Once again, you have the top down and you have what a scheduled work type that can just take the work item resource assignments and roll those up from the bottom up. And like with the financials, I could compare those two things. So for example, if I compare the top down committed assumption with the bottom up schedule reality, I just don't see a lot of differences early on, but later on in the project, I see that, for example, I didn't have anything planned for Jack Barker in July, but now it looks like I'm going to need 19% of his time in that period, et cetera. So once again, easy ways that you can get resource information to factor into your decision making and your progress status and the risks that you might have within your plans. Now, the piece for Azure DevOps that's key is the work plan. So if I go into a work plan, first thing I want to show you is that there's different what we call work types. And I mentioned this in the slides. Now we give you some out of the box ones, but you can even create your own if you have other ones. But for example, there's a schedule work type that is either more waterfall oriented or more combined, where we have that hybrid, as we talked about, of your agile and your waterfall components of the same project or effort. There's a dedicated backlog area that's more oriented towards agile backlogs. And then we have risks and issues and changes and key decisions, but we have people that add their own for things like assumptions and lessons learned and whatever else it might be into these work types. So once again, very flexible to meet the needs that you have, okay? Now, if I go into the backlog type and I look at what's in here, I can see that I have this epic. I have a feature with some user stories within it. I have another feature with some user stories within it. And notice that I have these icons off to the left-hand side, meaning each of these individual work items that are in here, or all except for one, are coming over from Azure DevOps right now, okay? It's also telling me that this item has actually been synced with the scheduled work type. So that means that it's included not only here at its source, but it's being factored into the overall schedule so that I can combine it, intermingle it, and maybe even do some combined scheduling of those types of things as we go across, okay? So we can do a few things here. For example, I could take a new item here and I could manually add it to the schedule work type here and make sure that it gets included over there. Or in a very slick way, our integration can handle this. So for example, if I go in to the connector, which I'm actively connected to an Azure DevOps plan, and I say import, I can decide to hit a checkbox to say, as I bring items, work items in from Azure DevOps, not only put it into the backlog, which is the primary area that we put it, but also add it to the schedule so I don't have to do any duplicate effort to make that happen. And then I can look at it in the context of the overall schedule or standalone as the Agile backlog. So a lot of flexibility on here on how we would like to make that happen. Okay. If I go to the schedule work type, what does that mean? So if I go over here to the schedule and I expand this out, I've got all these things that are being managed in the schedule by itself. They're not related to work going on in Azure DevOps. In this particular case, it could be a separate artifact. You know, we have some people that just manage a backlog for an Agile project, and maybe leadership just wants to see what the release schedule is here. And maybe people would put the 5 releases in here and the dates to communicate that so leadership is satisfied of when things are going to happen based upon our projections. Now, if I drill down in here in the development area and under develop code, notice now all of a sudden I have the development items that came in from the backlog intermingled with the non-Azure DevOps backlog pieces into a comprehensive schedule right here in one place. Now, if I'm here and I say I wanted to add an option of maybe let's view maybe a traditional Gantt chart into the mix, and I come over here, I've got things that are not in Azure DevOps, and I've got these items that are in Azure DevOps. I might want to create, say, a dependency to figure out when I can do these things realistically. And for example, like review or finalize the specifications here, maybe I want to drag a dependency down here to this backlog item of easy to use responsive form. And if that's the case here, we would then have a dependency here that if this moved out, this would move out with it. And we would understand that we are at risk because something that it's dependent on hasn't happened or isn't projected to happen. Now you can set up these integrations as either one way from Azure DevOps to here or bi-directional. And if there's a change here and you're tracking dates over in Azure DevOps, we can actually take that resultant change and push it back to Azure DevOps so we understand when that stuff can or can't happen. So once again, there's a benefit to seeing these things in the context of everything that's being done in the project instead of just the backlog independently. And once again, that depends on your desires and what you'd like to have happen. And there's all kinds of different views in here. Like here, I'm in a planning view, but let's just say I was going to go in here and say, oh, I don't know, let's go into a tracking view. And in that tracking view, it's basically giving me, and let me get rid of the Gantt chart at this point, we did, you know, how we're doing on effort and when things are going to start and finish. If I wanted to look at, oh, I don't know, you know, look at things like completed tasks or costs and things like that. We can have a lot of different views of this information right here within the schedule, okay? Now, if I go down to the, let me go back to the planning view real quick. I get back down to the development area, right? And I look at the item here from Azure DevOps, easy to use responsive form. And I click on what we call the hamburger over here for some additional capabilities in here. I might go in here and say, let's look at the advanced edit capabilities. So not only did we do dependencies, but for example, I might be able to look at things like predecessors, successors, resources, and maybe some advanced scheduling where I might put a calendar on this, or I might put a constraint type on here or other types of things. Now, not everybody does this, but just be aware that there's some advanced scheduling parameters that you can set up here that are in addition to what you might be able to do in Azure DevOps. And it all comes together into a comprehensive singular view right here within OnePlan. If I go to the integrations tab here again, and I see that I'm connected to an active Azure DevOps plan, I've been showing you so far what we do with those work elements over from Azure DevOps over here in OnePlan. But if I come over here and I go to open this item, this is the area from which it's bringing those things. Here are the features that it's bringing over. It's bringing over the children of those as far as the user stories, etc. Right? And as we go across that, we can see what's going on here within OnePlan. We'll talk a little bit later how we can access the OnePlan capability areas right here within Azure DevOps. But specific to this particular epic, I also can look at what's going on over on the OnePlan side without having to ever leave Azure DevOps. So for example, all the work planning on the schedule type with the development and the developed code and the items that we synced over are all showing up over here in relation to the other schedules. So for example, without OnePlan, you wouldn't see the non-Azure DevOps elements together with all this as you would see over here in the schedule. And you could look at all the other stuff in here as well. There is the details page, right, that we talked about that has all the data and metadata and summary information around that right here like we had. The financials that we showed you over there is available to us right here within Azure DevOps. Resource plan, right? Just a quick glance, same information, same data, but we're doing it right from here, from within there. And in the work plan, we might, investigate other areas. So for example, here, if we're looking at change requests or we're looking at issues or risks, for example, we can actually see those right within here and actually work with the details around those and open up a quick edit on any one of these ideas or one of these risks as far as what the nature of those things are and what the elements are there for us as well. Everything that we can do over in OnePlan, we can do right now here within the context of Azure DevOps. Some things we didn't cover are things like status reports. So for this individual project or epic, we can set up status report formats that automatically populate, but give us room to put the narratives in. So it speeds up our status reporting and even has related items that we can actually automatically pull over here, things like tasks in progress, active issues, etc. And I talked about snapshotting. When we submit these status reports, it snapshots these such that we have a history of the different status reports, and that supports our trending information. We can even supply these to non-Azure DevOps or OnePlan users by putting these status reports out to PDF, Word, or just send it out in the body of an email. But the idea here is that it speeds up that reporting process that we oftentimes have as almost like a project in and of itself. It also provides us things like insights. OnePlan provides us things like things that require our attention, like we have unsubmitted status reports, or we have unsubmitted timesheets, or we have tasks that have no resources assigned that we probably need to figure out what's going on there. So there's compliance things. There is dashboards that are particular to this particular epic. And so, for example, focus this in and be able to look at Power BI reports. We have an automated OData feed that automatically populates these reports such that leadership people or your people that aren't hands-on transactionally in OnePlan can get information regarding the different plans, and we can look at information on things like overall plans and financial summaries, etc., all the way across the board. And I guess the last part of this is the concept of visualization. We haven't really covered this, but for example, if we have any dependencies that we need to know about across different projects, and we also have relation to other things, like if we have strategic plans and objectives and key results, we can see that this VoIP phones project is actually supporting the achievement of this key result, which supports into this strategy or this objective. And related to this thing are other products, applications, and business capabilities that are needed for us to look at. And for example, if we were curious as to why something was yellow, we could easily, from this graphical depiction, pop out the information to understand why we're at risk in these different areas and what areas are causing this thing to be yellow. So once again, we're still in Azure DevOps doing this. Let me close this one. Let me take another approach on this. So as I go into the development area again, and I go into the Azure DevOps items that are in the schedule, intermingled with the rest of the schedule elements in here, notice that there's an icon for the specific task here for pay bill via mobile app, right? If I just click on there, instead of going to the epic, it's going to take me directly to this user story in Azure DevOps, right? And a few things here. One of the things here is that, we talked about timesheets. Well, sometimes in Agile environments, the word timesheet doesn't always have the best connotation. But for example, we have what's called a OnePlan work log. So here I'm in the user story, or it could be in the task, and I can actually pick a date. It usually defaults to today's date because I'm not dealing with past data that's in this demo set. But for this particular date, I can enter specific hours against this item right here in the context of me working with this in Azure DevOps. And this will actually feed that day's entry for a timesheet within that without me actually physically having to go to a timesheet. And this makes it easy for me to meet the needs of time reporting without actually necessarily having to participate in a timesheet metaphor for this. Now, that being said, if I go into OnePlan, and I can get to any of these different overall OnePlan capabilities in here if I've been given access to that, and I say go to my timesheet, what it will open up is the timesheet in OnePlan and basically show me the entry that was made in that work log in the form for this. So basically those 8 hours for paid bill via mobile app on July 1st is in there. If I would have done it for July 2nd, it would have shown up within here, etc. And you can actually put notes of explanation if you need some things for chargeback or billability purposes. Those things are all available to you. Also within this, I could say, let me go to the overall resource plan. I showed you the resource plan for an individual epic or project earlier in the demonstration. But here, if I'm looking at an aggregate resource plan across it all, this is where it all rolls up. So for example, if I go in and look at, in this case, it's organized by role, and I look at different people that are over and under allocated, and let me just go from hours to say percentages or FTEs here. I can come in here and for example, I can see, hey, listen, I've got things assigned generically to a developer here that need to have a name put to them. Now you can assign things as named individuals, as roles. You can even assign and aggregate people into teams and assign these things as teams in here as well. But the idea here is that you can take a look at where people are over and under allocated. You could have possibly find candidates to determine, who might be a good match to do that and find people that have the bandwidth in these periods to take on this predictive maintenance thing and actually make the replacement right here. And I can do those types of things right here within Azure DevOps, okay? Other pieces in here, as a team member, since we're commingling in this particular adaptive scenario, Azure DevOps and non-Azure DevOps work, if you were doing all your work in Azure DevOps, you could just update those things in Azure DevOps, no problem. But what if you're part of a scenario like I'm showing you here now, where not all the work is done within Azure DevOps? Well, in that particular case, I can come to a singular My Work area in OnePlan, and let me do and organize this by plan. And I can see that there's things assigned to me in all these different plans that I might have to mark as complete, put percentage progress on there. I might want to put comments for comment threads in there for discussions. I might want to participate with my project manager or my scrum master on notes that I might want to do in there. And I might even want to build my own to-dos down here in a Kanban fashion that support this particular item should I want to. So the idea here is I have one place to go regardless of how many things I'm working on. And if I had waterfall tasks or issues assigned to me, those would show up here as well, giving me one comprehensive place to do all this, right? Another key piece for a team member or for any user is OnePlan Insights. I showed you the insights for that one particular plan of VoIP phones, but overall for yourself, me as this fictional Daniel Williams, I'm here in Azure DevOps, and it's telling me that I have overdue tasks, I have a timesheet overdue, that I have plans that are out of compliance, I have plans and tasks that need to be reviewed. It gives me easy access to the plans that I'm intimately involved with without having to navigate through a large portfolio to get to it, and I can open all the different areas, schedules, resources, all those things right from here. And any conversations that are related to my things, or alerts to what's due soon, all comes to me right here, and I have not left Azure DevOps, and I'm accessing this stuff from OnePlan. The other piece, I guess, if I go to the portfolios, which is where we started with this when we were in OnePlan in the browser by itself, I can go into the OnePlan menu, look at portfolios, and here's that trending view that we were looking at. Let me just, for the purposes of showing something different, let's go to, say, a compliance view. And in this particular case, it takes a different perspective on these portfolio items, and it's telling me number of late tasks and tasks at risk and tasks off track and active risks, active issues, and things like that, and giving me a compliance score based upon the things that we put in there. And that thing is configurable, okay? So once again, flexible things that we can do right here while we're in Azure DevOps that supplement what Azure DevOps provides in and of itself. We provide a portal it can be available to anybody in your organization, even if they're not named OnePlan users. such that they can submit ideas and requests that can be vetted and approved by the OnePlan users that are in here. As you can see, there's voting, that you can see whether or not you voted or not, or how many votes there are on that. There's a prioritization scheme with prioritization scores, etc. You can drill into, say, this website redesign, and you can see that you can establish business case narrative, prioritization, associated items that are in here, an approval workflow, etc. And that when you're done there, you can either manually or through workflow reorganize this to promote all that information from, say, an idea to a project or an epic, and have that move forward into the active portfolio from this particular pipeline. Okay, so you can reorganize this stuff all you like. And in this prioritization view, this might be a good place to show how I might use Sofia. So for example, in this prioritization view, let me paste a question here so I don't have to spend the time typing here, but it's based on votes, priority, and ROI. What 3 projects should we approve first and why? And let's ask the question and see what Sofia comes up with. Once again, especially in a large intake area with a lot of ideas, there's always more than we can ever do. Maybe help us focus on those things that require our attention most, using a bunch of different parameters that it's looking at. So it's telling us information about the ones that we should approve first and why. It's, ones that even though they don't have the votes or has the votes, the priority is there. Also a high priority, but and those types of things. So it's giving us rationale behind all that as we go through to help us in arriving at our decisions on what to promote into the active portfolio. The modeler, I would say, on the what if scenario, this gives us the ability to have a what if scenario area whereby, let me go into here, and it basically allows us to put into a model specific projects, active and otherwise, that we might want to consider. And there might be a total of 40 up here. And if I look at, say, for example, the resources and the financial aspects of doing these, I see a lot of red, meaning I probably can't do all this stuff. And there's a financial component to that as well. And as I look at this, I might look at something like, okay, say I have a $10 million budget. What can I do within that $10 million budget? And in this particular case, in this, I've selected and deselected projects to try and get down to, and I'll go into a more financial picture in here, to get down here to see something that's underneath a $10 million budget that will fit into that mix as we go through, okay? We could also then do other ones that maybe are $15 million budget and other things like that that we want to look at. But as we do multiple scenarios here, we can go look at what we call an analyze feature. And well, I guess outside of just selecting and deselecting projects, we can actually bring up a Gantt chart and do things like look at, maybe taking certain projects and moving them out, right, into, say, out of this current year, for example, or into the next quarter, and basically see what that does to the resource plan as we go through, et cetera. But ultimately, as many scenarios as we have, we can compare the data points that we're interested in, like benefits and budget and committed effort. We can look at, say, the bubble chart around this and see, what we selected and does it fit the right prioritization and benefits profile. Maybe look at the plans we didn't select and see if we need to reconsider. And we can even look at the visualization piece on this, such that the visualization, a different tact on this, is what we didn't select versus what we selected, and are there any predecessors and successors that we should consider, or the runway of all the interrelations that we have and what we might want to consider in our decision making, or reconsider the selections that we've made. So just some ideas here on things that get added to the Azure DevOps set of capabilities. So from a summarization perspective, Azure DevOps provides an integrated environment for software development that provides a lot of tools, but not really much on the portfolio management level of things. OnePlan extends Azure DevOps to enable those portfolio management capabilities and supports both scaled agile, hybrid, and adaptive approaches to portfolio management. And OnePlan capabilities can be accessed by users within Azure DevOps itself, and supports agile backlogs, waterfall schedules, and hybrids that combine both into the same schedule or work plan. And we can use Gen AI to help support and make more effective in the decision making and tracking for all the leadership, whether they be project managers, scrum masters, product owners, portfolio managers, etc. We do this full time, and this is our passion. And we've been recognized by Microsoft as their Project Portfolio Management Partner of the Year multiple times, 5 years running as either the winner or a finalist. We've been recognized by Gartner Group, Forrester, and Infotech Research as leaders in this space. So we live and breathe in. We offer free trials. So if you want to go to oneplan.ai/solutions, the adaptive project portfolio management is probably the basic on that. But if you want to go full strategic portfolio management, there's a template for that as well. And we're happy to provide complimentary assistance to this. Reach out to us, engage with us so we can help you get the most out of this trial, including maybe connecting these things and showing how these connectors work a little further. So hit us up for a OnePlan trial, hit us up for a roadmap workshop if you want to just discuss what it's going to take to get from where you're at to where you aspire to get to. Or if you want a more detailed demo, one-on-one that specifically addresses your challenges and pain points, reach out to us, engage. Reach us at contact@oneplan.ai or research us more at www.oneplan.ai. So with that, I'd like to thank you. We think about this hub of bringing these things together as the power of one. We hope to engage with you. Hope you got some value out of the information in this webinar today, and we hope to talk to you soon. Have a great day.